A chatterbait is truly one of my favorite lures. And the biggest reason that I love this bait is that you can catch bass on it throughout the entire year. Spring, summer, winter, fall, clear water, muddy water, you can pick up a chatterbait and go out there and catch bass. It also allows you to cover a lot of water very, very quickly. But there is there are three really important aspects of a chatterbait that I want to discuss in this video. So let's go ahead and talk about them. But real quick before we do, guys, I want to let you know that I'm going to be at the Columbus Fishing Expo here in Ohio. This is like the first or second week of February. I will put all the information down below in the description. If you guys want to meet me, come up and say hi, talk about bass fishing. I'm going to have my fin fishing apparel booth there. So I would love to see you guys. Check out those dates, check out that link down below in the description, and you can pick up some tickets. All right, let's talk about chatterbaits. Now, probably one of the most very important thing about a chatterbait is that all bladed jigs out there on the market are not created equal. A couple of years ago, I did a test on bladed jigs. I took a lot of the major brands of bladed jigs and I just tested them side by side by side. And the big thing that I found about these baits is that they are actually a lot more different than they look. Because a lot of the bladed jigs out there in the market, you look at them and they all look really, really similar. But they're actually very, very different. And what I mean by different, some of them, for example, have a lot more aggressive noise under the water. For example, a jackhammer actually gets its noise from the way that it sounds underwater. If you compare that bait to a Phoenix vibrating jig, the Phoenix vibrating jig is a lot more diluted under the water. That's not the word that I'm looking for, but I don't know. You can't hear it quite as well under the water. So there are situations when you're fishing where bass want a very aggressive noise, and there are situations where they don't want that aggressive noise. And so having a chatterbait that kind of fits what you're fishing is very, very important. So one thing that I like to do is if I'm in really loud conditions, if it's really windy, if it's really muddy water, that's when I like a loud chatterbait. If I'm in a little bit more silent conditions, maybe it's very still, there's not as much wind, I'm fishing clear water, that's when I like the bladed jigs that don't put off quite as much vibration. Another big difference is the running depths of these baits. And you know, these baits are controlled really by the speed that you crank them. But with that being said, if I were to take a Strike King Thunder Cricket and a Chatterbait jackhammer, and I put the exact same trailer on them and they were both the exact same weight, we'll just say 3/8 ounce, and I cast them out on the exact same rod and just reeled them in on the exact same speed, that Thunder Cricket actually dives quite a bit deeper than the jackhammer. And that's because of the blade. The blade is a little bit, it doesn't catch as much water. There's not quite as much lift in the water as the jackhammer. So if you're fishing a bait a little bit deeper, sometimes it's better to pick up that Thunder Cricket. So these are just the big differences that I have seen in these baits, is that not every bait out there is created equally. And there will be times when you go out fishing and you and your buddy are throwing this maybe two different bladed jigs, and one of you is going to be catching them better than the other because of one of those characteristics. So that's a really, really important thing to know. That's number one. Now, number two, you will get far more bites with a bladed jig if you impart a little bit of action to them. And the best thing that you can do with this bait is simply make it fall from time to time. Now, if you're fishing this bait around grass, you will hear a lot of anglers talk about getting this bait actually hung in the grass, snapping it free, and letting it fall. And that is a phenomenal way to catch bass. As a matter of fact, I fished a chatterbait down on the Harris Chain of Lakes a number of years ago, and the only way that you would catch fish is if you were to let that bait fall. They would only hit that bait on the fall. Now, with that being said, even if you are not fishing a chatterbait in grass situations, I find it to be still extremely important to let this bait fall every now and then. So I will work it kind of similarly that I will with like a rattle trap style bait, a lipless crankbait, where I'll cast that bait out, I'll crank it 3, 4, 5, 6 times, and I'll let it fall. And then I'll crank it 3 or 4 or 5 times and let it fall. And every now and then what I like to do is just kind of pop my rod up, just let that thing fly up and then fall back down. And when you're doing all that, you're kind of making that bait go up and down in the water column. You are triggering an innate response from a bass. So a bass that won't hit that bait, a lot of bass, we don't always see them, they're just tracking that bait. They're kind of one-on-one with that bait. And all of a sudden you pop it and let it fall, bam, it triggers a reaction strike from the bass. That is so, so important to do even when you're not fishing it around grass. So, so important. Now, the third thing, this is also very important, especially with chatterbaits. You want to make sure you have a sharp hook on that bait. And I know that that sounds really, really like, duh, Tyler. But the thing about chatterbaits is you don't lose them a lot and they can catch a lot of fish. And with a, with a crankbait, it's easy to switch out treble hooks. But with a chatterbait, you don't have that luxury. You can't just switch out your main hook. So something that's really, really important to keep with you is a hook sharpener. All the time throughout the day when I'm fishing a chatterbait, I'm just gonna run my finger across that bait. I'm trying to make sure that it's still very sticky, sharp. You don't have to set the hook really, really hard with chatterbaits, which is the good thing, but you will have to set the hook a lot harder if it's even a little bit rolled over on the top. It really doesn't allow that bait to penetrate the way it should. And I probably shouldn't use penetrate ever again. It just sounds weird. Anyways, those are the 3 big things about a chatterbait. Now, if you guys want to actually see what I think about your trailer bait or your chatterbait trailers, I'm going to leave a link for a video that I did right here. It's really, really important to make sure you have your chatterbait trailer facing the right way, and I talk about it in this video. So, guys, comment below. I'll see you at the show, and I'll see you tomorrow.